A recording with Mr. Joseph Teti. The long-awaited sequel to Lone Operator Volume 1 is Lone Operator Volume 2. We've dropped the ball. My fault that we haven't done an episode in a couple of weeks, but we're going to jump right into Chapter 3. For those of you who don't know Joe, go back and watch Volume 1. Lone Operator. Joe's obviously been on this podcast like 25 times, but we're deciding to dissect this book bit by bit, just do like a half hour every week. And for those of you guys that are interested, grab it. I'll put it in the description, sticky in the top comment, Lone Operator. It's a funny fucking book. But Joe, how about you take over, my man?
Yeah, so we talked about Chapter 1 and 2. Chapter 3 in my book, the actual name of the chapter is called The Warrior Mindset. And, so many people have written about the warrior mindset and, talked about it and given their opinions on it. And I really think that it's overplayed, underestimated weapon that a person can own. But the problem is people's definition of it, at least my definition, is a little bit different. Everybody thinks about warrior mindset and they attribute that to being in the military or in some special operations group or law enforcement or whatever. But the fact of the matter is, man, warrior mindset is for everyone. And it's not just aggressiveness, like everybody talks about this warrior mind aggressiveness. Well, it's a lot more than that. That's a piece of it, but it's also, being able to, have critical thinking skills under extreme stress, right? That's definitely a piece of it. And being able to function when you're uncomfortable. So that old, be comfortable being uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. That's all part of it too. There's so many little facets of it, right? It's just not just all out aggression. That's just not what it is. At least in my opinion, it's not. It's the never fail mentality. Win at all costs. And I talk about it in my book because I was on a mission. Look, dude, I've never been grievously injured, never. Matter of fact, my worst injury downrange, I think we talked about, is I smashed my finger flat in a Hilux truck. And I did it myself, so by mistake. So before anybody starts talking about, wounds and stuff, my injuries are nothing compared to other guys. But that particular chapter, I talk about this mission I went on, and I was outside. I wasn't part of the assault force. I was actually pulling security outside, and a round had gone underneath one of our vehicles. And when it did, it basically, the round must have came apart because the only thing that hit me that I ended up finding out was part of the casing. But it hit me in the shin nonetheless, and I felt it, and it burned like hell. Obviously, if it would have been a whole round, it would have been a whole different story, but it wasn't. And basically, our medic pulled this thing out. It only went in about that far. But anyway, it's just about, wow, okay, I just got hit with something. It was a little shocking, for the first time. Like, wow, I actually got shot or something. Shrapnel hit me or something. But I knew it wasn't shrapnel. I knew it was a round. And so anyway, it's easy. And I'm going to say, man, it's easy to panic in a situation like that. It's not something that happens every day.
Yeah.
Yeah. It hurt. What was really strange is it didn't throb. It burned. It actually had a burning sensation to it, which is, I don't know. That was the feeling I had. But it's just still staying in a fight, which is also part of the warrior mindset. Staying in the fight, not going, oh, wait, time out. I just got hit with something. I need a medic right now. That's not the way combat is. There's no timeouts, well, there is when you get home and you're cleaning your weapon and having something to eat and debriefing. That's when it's over. But in the middle of it, there's no timeout. So that's pretty much what the whole chapter is about. And I just kind of go into detail about this mission. And it wasn't about the mission. It was just the fact that I got so caught off guard. Here I am pulling security of all things. And, no one else even got hurt except for me. And normally the security guys don't get hurt. It's the assaulters that actually will take injuries. So anyway, that's pretty much what that whole chapter is about, and just my views on the warrior mindset.
And you wrote about it, correct? Isn't there a guy that you kind of like tipped your hat to? It was like an enemy, but it was like you guys tried to take him down with like a couple bursts, and he just kept getting up. And
yeah. So this dude this bad guy was hiding behind a low wall. If I'm not mistaken, it was a wall that surrounded a well that was in this compound. He was behind it, and I was with another guy that I was working with, and this dude had an RPG, and he took off running, and my buddy just actually really quickly gunned. He shot this dude, like you could actually see the puffs of smoke, like it was really poof poof, like you actually see where he's getting hit, and hit this dude like first shot in the shoulder and went down to like his hip. They got hit like 5 or 6 times, bop, 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 bop. And he stumbled, the RPG went out of his hand, and the guy kept fighting. He kept he was still actively engaging, trying to get his weapon. And this dude was shot mortally, at least 3 rounds in the A zone, So, anyway, I remember I kind of just looked over, and it's so weird what happens in the fog of war, I remember looking over at my buddy and just kind of like, we were just like stymied that this dude was actually still crawling, trying to pick up his RPG. And just, you can hate and respect your enemy at the same time. Yeah. Right. And let me tell you, anyway, so my buddy ended up popping him, shot him in the head. And, but actually it's a really good point, because you got to think about this. You don't have to really be worried doing that kind of work for the people that are like halfway committed, right? If the enemy's only halfway committed, they have no stomach for the fight, and when they get hit, they're done. What you got to worry about are these people that are 100% committed, 100% in the fight. They've already basically given up the thought that they're going to survive. They've already basically conceded they're going to die anyway. It's a tough person to kill, and you don't have to be in Iraq or Afghanistan to encounter these people, and that's what I wanted people from the book. It's like, just because this guy was, a terrorist doesn't mean there's other people here in our country that are just as motivated to either rob you or kill you or whatever. Maybe they're on drugs, which makes it even worse, because that dulls pain. Yeah. So anyway, that was the whole premise of that. And I got to tell you, that was the first time I actually saw something like that. Normally you hit a guy and they take a few steps and they fall, and that's depending on where you hit them. I see them in the leg or arm or something. But where I saw a person get hit multiple times and was still fighting, was still actively trying to get. That's scary, man. Yeah. The human body can take an ass whipping.
Yeah. Yeah. And another thing you explained that kind of has always interested me, you talked about it several times in your book, is like the actual effect of adrenaline. I always thought that was like Hollywood shit.
Right.
Like the way you describe it, as it truly is. Right? Yeah,
dude, it is. I think everybody at one point in time in their life has had an adrenaline dump. But yeah, adrenaline is, it's secreted by the pituitary gland, and it happens in a microsecond. It's the flight or fight. It's been around since we were cavemen, and it's kind of hard to stop, but you can't. But what I will tell you is this: through training. And repetition and exposure to those type of high intensity confrontations and events, the adrenaline dump gets less and less and less. And here's one misnomer. Everybody talks about, when you get an adrenaline dump, you have several things happening. We lose fine motor skill because all the blood pools from your extremities to your vital organs. It's a protection thing. Sometimes you get auditory exclusion. Like if you ever watched the movie with Tom Hanks when they were storming Normandy. Dude, that first scene of them hitting the beach, that is showing a really good example of like an adrenaline dump.
Okay.
things speed up, like that. Okay, I've had it bad once like that, but it never got that bad again. But everything kind of slows down. You have time displacement where you may think, wow, how long were we on the target? It was 5 minutes. Well, it was like 10. Like everything's. But the big one that you hear everybody talk about is tunnel vision. And so what happens is during a huge adrenaline dump, your vision will go. Basically, human beings can see about 140 degrees, right? We're not chameleons, so we can see about 140 degrees. Well, your 140 degrees goes to about like that. Mm-hmm. Okay, and so it's kind of like looking through a small tube. And so everybody, and I've heard people say this, and it's just not true. When you get tunnel vision, you need to break it, obviously, immediately in any type of high intensity armed confrontation, whether it's combat or a robbery, because now you shut off the whole room. Well, people will say, well, just turn your head and look around. Well, the fact of the matter is, that is not symptomatic of your eyes. Tunnel vision is from your brain. And what it is that your eyes are taking in so much information. You're basically overloading your computer. Yeah. The RAM has no more room.
Yeah.
Okay, you cannot take in all of the information. You're basically at overload. And that's what causes your tunnel vision. It's not a thing from your eyes. That's nothing to do with the cones and rods in your eyes.
Yeah, it has to do with your ability to. It's like looking at a satellite image. Like you can only zoom in on the mailbox of one house in one state. You can't simultaneously look at Miami and New York. Right. So you're still taking. Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah, dude, that's what it is. I mean, I tell people, basically your brain cannot process what it's seen. Mm-hmm. It's taken in so much data. You're just crunching the RAM in a computer, and it's like,
yeah.
And that's what happens. So looking around is not really going to break your tunnel vision. What's going to break your tunnel vision, and look, dude, I've talked to other guys with a lot more experience than me. So this isn't just me just pulling out of my rear end. I'm just telling you what I have been taught from guys much more experienced, and I've seen it happen with my own experience. So the way you learn to deal with an adrenaline dump is by doing the same thing over and over. So doing runs to the shoot house and getting that adrenaline dump, and doing it. And free fall parachuting or whatever. You'll get an adrenaline dump until you get to a point where you're like, all right, I got this. I know what's going to happen. Because I used to get it during the free fall course. I've never free fall. I mean, on static line jump, I'd never free fall. And there I am standing on a ramp looking down 12.5 and going, I hope I do this shit right. Even though you have an instructor right next to you, but still you're getting a huge adrenaline dump.
You're jumping out of the plane,
but as you do it, that tunnel vision just kind of goes away. You still get an elevated heart rate and all of that, but it is not affecting you in a negative way, where it inhibits your ability to conduct an operation. So that's one of the biggest things I would tell people is like with the adrenaline dump, you're going to have all kind of strange things going on, but none of them are actually going to help you. Well, except for one, your pain tolerance is going to go way up. You're not going to feel if you get cut sometimes. But anyway, most of the stuff is really bad. You lose your fine motor skills. So when it comes to shooting, you better learn how to shoot doing gross motor skills, because all your fine motor skills are going to be hampered, and so that's a whole nother thing. Training scars when it comes to training for the fight. You need to understand what's going to happen to you in a high intensity armed confrontation. Matter of fact, I think I even told you, somebody tried to rob me last year at an ATM, and here's a perfect example. And so I'm standing there, I parked my car and walked up to the ATM. It was about 10:30 at night. And I put my card in, and I'm pressing in the buttons, and I look, and there's a guy standing right there, and it caught me so off guard, even though in situations where he was hidden. And I remember I got some tunnel vision. The first thing I kind of centered on, because he had his hands, I looked like his hands were like this big. And after he said, well, I don't, he made some comments about, I don't need a gun. and I punched this dude. Long story short, I got an adrenaline dump there, and my life necessarily wasn't in danger, but I perceived it. I perceived it as, so I got that instant. Wow, this guy's going to try to rob my ass. But the sad thing is, Tom, you can't really. People try. You can't really fake an adrenaline dump. You know what I mean? Like, you can't. It's like your body's reaction. You can't. I've heard people say, "I'm going to put my hands in ice and numb my hands." You know, it's kind of hard, far-fetched, because your hands aren't cold. It's just you've lost some of your dexterity. But anyway, people try to simulate it, but the fact of the matter is, you can't. You just can't.
Do you think the precursor to this was like in your book, like going to like the train yard with your friend and planning y'all's operations when you're little? Do you think you were like unknowingly or subconsciously laying the groundwork for like mini adrenaline dumps, like sneaking out and going and doing that shit, and the lights would come on and you'd be like, oh fuck?
Yeah, it's actually a really good point. I mean, completely unintentional. We were too young and stupid to go, okay, well, we're going to go do this, and we're going to get adrenaline dumps, and we're going to figure out how this works. I mean, and we did, especially the one time I snuck into the Union Railroad roundhouse and almost got busted. A huge adrenaline dump. But, I would have to say for sure that helped me at a young age. Certainly not to the extent of a gunfight, but back then it might as well have been, 15 years old, and we're sneaking. We weren't criminal kids, but if we would have got caught, we would have probably got in some trouble. We weren't damaging anything. We were just playing commando. But yeah, we were definitely having adrenaline dumps doing that, because we knew what we were doing. We'd get in trouble. And I knew I was going to go into the military, so I'm figuring, oh man, if I get in trouble, I'm not going to be able to go to the military. Stupid decisions, young, dumb, stupid. We all do it. But yeah, for sure, definitely had a few adrenaline dumps doing that kind of stuff. I remember, completely off subject, but I remember a buddy of mine that his mom and dad had a boat down on the Allegheny River, and I had a phobia of being in water. I could not see the bottom. I could be in a swimming pool, 15 feet of water, as long as I could see there was something about my feet dangling.
Yeah,
I don't know what it was.
That just sucks.
Kind of over it now. But,
I'm not. I can't jump into a lake, man. I can't jump into a lake. Fuck that.
Yeah, back in the day, man, I was kind of freaked out about it. And so my buddy's like, come on, we're going to go underneath. I'll never forget this, and talk about an adrenaline dump. We went underneath the dock. So if you can imagine floating docks where the boats are parked at, right?
Yeah.
So it was a piece, wood with styrofoam underneath it. But if you went on the end and looked down it, and all the boats are parked like this, there was like a little tunnel that was just big enough that your head could fit through, and you could go all the way through this thing and you could like see the slots of the people. So my buddy Bill's like, come on, man, let's go through here. I'm like, nah, I'm not doing it. So of course I succumbed to peer pressure. And so we go in this thing, and it was probably, I would say, 40 yards long from where it was out in the water to the shore. And I remember he went in first, and I was behind him, and we're basically just pushing our knife, can't touch. And I'm just going along, like this. And all of a sudden the water starts going like this. And I hear this. And dude, back in the day, they had steel barges that went up and down the Allegheny because there were steel mills. And dude, the water started doing this. And the next thing then I remember my lips were sticking through the slots of the damn wood. If you would have walked above us, you probably would have stepped on my damn lips, dude. I remember a massive adrenaline dump there, dude. Massive.
Fuck that.
And yeah, I mean, almost drowned. But those are the kind of situations you want to avoid. But if you've never had an adrenaline dump, I kind of feel bad for you, because you don't know what it feels like. It's debilitating. And that's where that whole warrior mindset comes in too, being able to manage that kind of stuff.
Yeah. But it's an adrenaline dump. It just kind of seems like the normal stresses of life compressed into like 10 seconds or something, like metaphorically.
Sure.
Because, right, it's like, what happens when in life when all of a sudden everything happens at once. Your brother died. For me, okay, brother died a month after I decided not to go to medical school. A month after I started dating a girl, which is a month after I moved home, and all of a sudden it was like everything is just up in the air. Like somebody flipped the table.
Sure.
All the chips are in the air, but you kind of have to learn to like survive, like you said, be comfortable where others are uncomfortable. You kind of have to learn to like navigate that insanity.
Yes.
And I would say that's like the warrior mindset. Is you have to, everything's in the air, and are you going to freak out? No, fuck, oh fuck. Are you going to go run and hide? Or is it like, okay.
You got to manage the situation, not let the situation manage you.
Yeah.
Just like in combat. Dude, I mean, I can honestly tell you, I don't think I ever went on a mission that went perfect.
Yeah.
This doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So you manage it. Because if you don't manage it, the situation will manage you, and that becomes a problem. So, but like what you were just talking about, a lot of people would get like an anxiety attack. Mm-hmm. I've had one in my entire life, and no, it wasn't downrange. It was in, as a civilian at home. Yeah. But I've had one. And that when it is just like what you were saying, this on top of this, on top of this, on top of this, and it's like one more, and your cart just goes.
Yeah, and then an anvil falls.
We're human beings, man. We're human beings. I mean, I know guys that I worked with. They were in Delta and SEAL Team 6 and other units, and highly, highly competent, very smart dudes, and they turned to drinking. They turned to drugs, that suffer from PTSD really bad. I mean, these are really strong-minded men. Everybody. The point I'm trying to make is this: everybody, you, me, everybody's got a breaking point. End of story.
Yeah.
But one of the interesting things I actually found out, a little off topic, was what coping mechanisms are, and this gets into psychology pretty deep. And I didn't really know what it was until the unit that Dale and I served in. They got into the weeds pretty deep psychology wise for the operators, just because of the nature of the business. But anyway, a coping mechanism. I don't know if you ever heard of the term.
I mean, I've heard of it loosely, like coping mechanism.
Yeah. So I never heard of it, but it was explained to me by one of the psychologists. He took a bunch of tests and interviews, and basically what a coping mechanism is as you get older. The way I understand it, if you've never really experienced any trauma in your life, your coping mechanisms are basically like sterile.
Yeah.
You haven't been exposed to any trauma, any drama, death, divorce, whatever the case may be.
It's like your immune system, your mental immune system hasn't been tested.
Exactly. Your mental immune system is basically like a baby's. Yeah. You've been in a bubble, silver spoon in your mouth.
Yeah.
Mom and dad coddles you. You've never been exposed to the nastiness of life. Well, unfortunately, that wasn't me. I had a lot of trauma growing up, mm-hmm. Which a lot of us do. But as you have trauma as a young man or young woman, your coping mechanisms get stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger, to where what would rattle you, or what would rattle somebody else, I should say, it's probably not going to rattle you, because you're like, been there, done that, really? Like, that's nothing. I had to bury my mother. Mm-hmm. In high school. That's pretty traumatic.
Yeah, absolutely.
From a very tragic and, untimely death. And a lot of other stuff, being bullied, divorce. So it could be all kinds of things. But anyway, the more of that you have, I guess, is growing up the way, and I hope I'm explaining this right. The way you live your life growing up is increasing your capacity to handle stress.
Yeah.
That. So if your coping mechanisms are a certain level when you go to combat, the chances are you're going to be able to handle what you're seeing and smelling and everything else, right? Doesn't mean you're not going to suffer from PTSD, but you're going to be able to handle it to a point where you can function.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why, a lot of men and women that went to Vietnam, they do suffer from PTSD because they literally were kids, were drafted, and boom, the next thing you know, they're in combat. They had no time. Their coping mechanisms were not developed.
Yeah.
So as you go through, like my career in Marine Corps and in SF and in the unit, you get exposed to, different stimulus. You find out somebody gets killed in an accident. I mean, I knew a guy that drowned on an open water swim when I was in Okinawa. Like, what? Yeah. Just a basic open water swim. Stuff like that. It just increases your ability to deal with shit.
Yeah.
That's what a coping mechanism is.
Yeah. Do you think that talking about guys that they come back and they drink or do drugs or whatever, do you think, and this is my very simplistic take on it, do you think it's because, like, when you're in combat and you get an adrenaline dump, it's brutal, but there's also like this black and white in combat that isn't applicable in civilian life? It's like adrenaline dump, kill the bad guy's dead, go back to base, adrenaline dump over, versus it's like right. Civilian life, it's like adrenaline dump because you got fired and your wife left you.
Right.
But there's no bad guy to kill. I mean, you could kill your boss and your
right.
wife, but then you're going to jail. And it's like there's no,
right.
it's like they say how we get adrenaline dumps and the human body doesn't know how to deal with it because you get an adrenaline dump when you're in traffic. And it's like there's right. no water buffalo to kill.
Right. It's the extreme, I think, Tom, is what it is, and I can kind of relate to it. Again, I did my bit, certainly not the most experienced guy in the world, but I see how some guys can come back and they just can't relate. I remember one time I came home from a deployment, and it's a perfect example, literally did a mission that early that morning. That afternoon, I was on a helicopter, flew to Kabul, processed, did some stuff, and I was on a flight home. 48 hours later, I'm in a food line shopping.
Yeah.
And I'm just kind of like, it's really hard to put into words, but it's just a very uncomfortable feeling. I'm looking around like, man, these people don't have a fucking clue. You know what I mean? Like, wow, what a peaceful life you have. 48 hours later, we're explosively breaching a compound and, doing what we did. And, 2 days later, I'm food shopping in the food line. It's a really tough adjustment, I guess it is. Even for the strongest guys, and I'm not one of them. I know people, and Dale's talked about this. Mm-hmm. It's you can be the most mentally and physically strong guy in the world, but again, your body can only take so much. Your mind can only take so much. We're humans. We're not computers.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's getting the genie back in the bottle. I remember Dale saying that to me. He's like, letting it out's easy. The trick is putting it back and letting it stay there.
Yeah.
That's the tricky part, because when you're doing what we used to do for a living and you're in combat, you gotta let the genie out of the bottle all the way, not like just looking around. You gotta let that shit fly, man. You get, controlled rage is the word I was told.
Yeah.
Controlled. You're not out of control. Business. You're doing everything like almost like in a business-like fashion, but you're using aggression and speed and surprise and momentum. That's the other thing. You got to keep the momentum. But anyway, it's a very weird thing. And the sad thing is just as you start coming kind of like into your sweet spot after you get back,
you deployed.
You go right back out the door again.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? So it's like this never-ending roller coaster. It's like,
Yeah, and I know I said I'd let you go after a half hour, so we'll wrap this one up. But I was going to say, it's like, it kind of seems like Elon Musk's rockets, right? It's like the rocket's letting the genie out of the bottle. You can go out to space, you can go Mach 23 and dock with the space station. Landing's the hard part.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Getting off the ground is the easy part.
We've been able to shoot rockets up since Werner von Braun in World War II. It's only until 2016 that we've learned to land them vertically. It's like, you can let it out, man. You can let that shit fly.
Right.
How you gonna? You can jump out of the plane. Do you know how to land?
Right.
Yeah.
That's a very good analogy. It's true. It's and let me tell you, it took me a while. I don't really know how long. Maybe a year or something after I was done doing that stuff. It took me about a year till I was kind of like just let it go. Yeah. Like, all right, I don't do that no more.
Yeah.
You know, I've got a normal life, so to speak. I don't need to suppress certain feelings, and it's easy, dude. Let me tell you, you can ask any guy, ask Dale. I mean, it's easy, especially as a special operations guy, to wind up their clock, and you just got to be careful, you know, because some of these guys are going to wind your clock up. I mean, a lot of guys are just going to walk away from you, you know, because they're trained not to do that, you know, but that's the trick. You've got to learn how to suppress a lot of these feelings and emotions, and it's hard. It's very, very difficult. Yeah. It's very difficult. I actually pat my back. I've gotten to a point, I mean, I used to have I would argue with people, right? And it would get loud. It wouldn't get physical, but it would get loud. Right? I'm at a point now, I don't do that. Yeah. I just don't. I've suppressed it to a point where I won't raise my voice. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like if I'm in an argument of situation with someone, I just won't. I kind of like go into my turtle shell.
Yeah. You know? Yeah. It probably took me like 25 years to get to. Granted, I was never in combat, but I mean, yeah, it took a long time to. It's like pre-med, trying to get into med school, and you're competing against everyone else, or doing the podcast. You got to do more podcasts. You got to put them out. Right. You dial it up to 11, but then it's like go downstairs to the kitchen and like my mom's there, and it's like you got to bring it back down to 2. You can't interact. You can't if you're going 80 miles an hour on the highway for 5 hours, and then you get on an off ramp. You can't keep going 80. You got to slow down and pull into the McDonald's, right? You can't go.
It takes time. It takes time. It takes maturity. I mean, Lord knows I couldn't have done it when I was 30. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you know, I'm older now, and I've found my sweet spot in my life, and I like peace, and I like quiet and tranquility, and you know, I think that's really important too, because if you don't find that peace in your life and that tranquility, I don't think that stuff can ever go away. If it's always there, it's always kind of like pulling at you. But if you make yourself at peace, that stuff kind of just goes away. And if it does come back, you're like,
Yeah, I would say that's what meditation's done for me over the last 12 years.
Absolutely, man.
Is you just learn.
Absolutely. And people that are listening, I mean, even if you do 5 minutes of meditation a day, just go somewhere quiet, you know, lay there or sit there, what kind of meditation you do. That's part of Dale and I's autogenic conditioning. It's just some basic meditative strategies that, you know, just puts you at peace for a minute, just kind of recenters you, and takes 5-10 minutes. Yeah. You know, people aren't willing to make a 5 or 10 minute investment for themselves.
And that's,
don't know what to tell you.
Yeah. Yeah. That's, you know, it's like the old Zen proverb, everyone should sit for 20 minutes a day, meaning meditation. That's right. Unless, of course, you don't have time, in which case you should sit for an hour.
Yeah, there you go.
Make the time.
Yeah. I do it for 5 minutes. Dude, you want to laugh? I'll do it in the shower.
Oh, yeah.
I'll do it sitting in the bathtub.
Yeah.
You know, just you know, it's just kind of just like letting yourself go and hearing yourself breathe. And, you know, there's a way to do it, and with your arms, and letting your arms and your legs feel like they're just weightless. So getting your breathing centered, you know, using your stomach muscles to breathe. And it's not hard. I mean, my dumb ass can do it. Anybody can do it.
Yeah.
You know? So, but I tell you, it helps. It helps, especially when you're stressed out.
Yeah.
It helps.
Yeah, and it doesn't need to be more than 5 or 10 minutes. Don't go into it thinking you got to go do some 3-hour Buddhist shit. Nope, just sit down for 10 minutes. But Joe, I said I'd let you go after a half hour, and I've kept you for 35 minutes. So we'll wrap this bitch up, and we'll hit up Lone Operator Part 3 next week.
Yes, sir. Part 4.
Part 4, whatever.
Yeah, chapter 3. Yeah, chapter 4. You missed that first chapter.
I'm losing my mind, dude. I'm sorry. I'm fucking losing my mind. All right, Joe. Much love, brother. Thank you for coming on. And till next time. Everybody grab the book, Lone Operator. It'll be in the description. Stick it in this hop comment by none other than Mr. Joseph Teti.
Go to joeteti.com. Just got a new website up, too.
Fuck yeah. I'll put that in there, too.
joeteti.com.
I got you, man. All right, Joe.
Thanks, Tom.
Take it easy, buddy.
Cheers, brother.